What if your struggle with words wasn't a flaw, but a map to your deepest strength? What if clear speech isn't about sounding smart, but thinking clearly? What if mastering your words could reshape your confidence, presence, and identity? Have you ever walked away from a conversation only to beat yourself up afterward? I should have said this, or why couldn't I come up with a better response? You're not stupid. You're just stuck, trapped in a swirl of racing thoughts while your mouth fails to say what your mind actually means. It's a frustrating, deflating feeling knowing you've got something to say, but the words never make it past the bottleneck between idea and expression. And the more it happens, the more your confidence takes a hit. Eventually, you start to believe it's just not in you. That clear communication isn't your thing, and maybe never will be. But speaking with clarity isn't some rare gift reserved for a lucky few. It's a skill, and like any skill, it can be built not with cheap tricks or quick hacks, but by cultivating real inner strength. This is where Stoicism comes in. Stoic philosophy doesn't promise to make you sound impressive. It teaches you how to speak truthfully, true to yourself, to your thoughts, and to the moment. If you want your words to be a sharp tool instead of a foggy burden, this is where you begin. Number 1. Unlocking speech clarity. Have you ever felt like your mind was bursting with things to say, but the moment you opened your mouth, everything tangled up? Your words stumbled, your thoughts pulled back before they could fully form. And all you could do was wish you could articulate everything as clearly as it appeared in your head. But instead, you stayed silent, not because you had nothing to say, but because you were afraid. Afraid of saying the wrong thing, of sounding foolish, of seeing those looks that suggest you're not smart enough to have a voice of your own. Stoic philosophy teaches that fear is what keeps us from acting according to reason. And speaking with clarity and confidence is the articulation of a mind that's been put in order, not one clouded by anxiety or ego. Being articulate doesn't begin with the mouth. It begins with a clear, composed mind. But a sign your thoughts are disorganized, like a crowded market without structure. No one can sell from a stall that's a mess. And when you focus too much on how others might judge each word, you stop focusing on what you truly want to articulate. That's when you lose control. And the Stoics remind us you should only concern yourself with what you can control in communication. You can't control how others react, but you can control your intention. Think of a great storyteller, not someone who dazzles with elegant language, but someone whose words feel like they're flowing effortlessly. That natural articulation comes from letting go of the pressure to sound good and choosing instead to speak truthfully. And to get there, you need practice, mindful, consistent practice. Every stammer, every awkward phrase isn't a failure. It's feedback from reality itself. The toughest but fairest teacher, as the Stoics say. A simple way to practice is by describing your daily life in the clearest, most honest terms you can. Don't just say, "I'm tired." Say, My body feels sluggish from a poor night's sleep, and my mind isn't ready to face the day. This habit trains your brain to notice the nuance and to articulate your reality more precisely, like a blacksmith removing impurities from steel. Of course, there will be times when the words don't come. You'll have the idea, but articulating it fully feels just out of reach. That's when your vocabulary is like a limited palette. You can still paint, but the image lacks depth. Articulate speech isn't just smooth, it's precise. Using the right words to move the listener through the exact emotional rhythm you intended. That's why strengthening your articulation must go hand in hand with expanding your vocabulary. And that's exactly where we're headed next. Number 2, growing your lexical toolkit. Imagine you're caught in the middle of a storm of anger. Emotions surge. Your mind races with thoughts that are dying to be released. But when you open your mouth, all you can manage are the same tired phrases, looping like an old recording. In that moment, you're not losing because you're weak. You're losing because you don't have the words to say what you mean. Without words, your thinking gets stuck. And when your thinking is stuck, you're no longer in control. The Stoics taught that mastering life begins with mastering speech. And mastering speech begins with the ability to express exactly what you feel and think. Vocabulary isn't decoration. It's the toolkit of the mind. A person with a rich vocabulary is like a skilled craftsman with the right tools for every task. A person with poor vocabulary, on the other hand, has only a hammer. And when all you have is a hammer, every problem starts to look like a nail. That's when you begin to speak too simply, too bluntly, or in circles that lead nowhere. The irony. Being smart doesn't mean using complicated words, but using the right words always makes people listen. There are practical ways to expand your vocabulary, but they all require effort. Words won't fall into your lap. You have to chase them in real life. Read books, not just to learn words, but to see how they work inside a story. Read blogs, articles, letters, anything written in the language you want to master. When you see a new word, guess its meaning from context. Then look it up to confirm. That little moment, so that's what it means, is when the word starts becoming yours. Another deeper approach is to learn word roots. When you understand that Bennett in Latin means good, it becomes easier to remember and predict words like benefit, benevolent, and benign. Words stop being isolated objects. They become part of a living system where every new word opens a gateway to many more. But knowing isn't enough. You have to use them. When you learn a new word, try slipping it into everyday conversation, not to show off, but to test if you truly understand it. Getting it wrong isn't the problem. Hiding from the effort is what kills your progress. The real question isn't how many words you know, but how many you use to understand others and to let others understand you. When you find the right word, You don't have to say much. When you name what someone else is feeling but couldn't articulate, you earn their trust. That's the quiet power Stoicism points to. Not loud, not flashy, but precise and razor sharp. So start today. The next time you feel like complaining, try to say it differently, more precisely, more honestly. The next time you're angry, don't explode or suppress. Ask yourself, what is the name of this feeling? Every new word you learn isn't just another entry in your mental dictionary. It's a new step toward mastering yourself. And if you're serious about building inner strength, one word at a time, stick around and hit subscribe, because here we don't speak to impress, we speak to stand firm. Number 3, mastering active listening. There are times when you think you're communicating, but in reality, you're just waiting for your turn to speak. It's more common than you'd think. Happens in meetings, in intimate conversations, even around the dinner table. What often gets lost in the back and forth is a deceptively simple, yet incredibly rare skill: the ability to truly listen. The Stoics taught that to master your words, you must first master your silence. Not a passive silence, but one that is fully present. Active listening isn't just nodding, faking interest, or waiting to debate. It's the act of pausing your own mental noise, the stream of thoughts like, what should I say next? Is that right? Or, where is this person wrong? And focusing entirely on what the other person is actually saying. When you listen properly, you don't just hear the words, you hear the emotions, the hesitations, and everything left unsaid. The Stoics believed that every emotion and impulsive reaction should be governed by reason. In conversation, interrupting, rushing to judgment, or assuming you know what someone will say are all signs of an undisciplined mind. But when you ask questions to clarify, when you paraphrase, repeating the other person's idea in your own words, you're not just understanding the message, you're showing up. You're putting your ego aside to make space for real dialogue. A conversation can be a place where two people genuinely meet, or just two egos taking turns monologuing. Active listening turns communication into connection. It allows you to understand deeply, respond accurately, and most of all, build trust. Something you can't do if you're just listening to reply. Think back to the last time someone listened to you without interrupting, without jumping in to give advice. How did that feel? That's a gift you can offer too, simply by being fully present when someone else speaks. You don't need any complex techniques, just one habit. Quiet your mind. If you want to respond, pause a beat. And if you think you understand, try saying it back in your own words, just to be sure you're not projecting. Over time, you'll find your own words becoming sharper, not because you've learned how to speak better, but because you've learned how to listen right. Clarity in speech begins with depth in listening. And once you truly understand others, imagine what could happen if you started understanding yourself the same way. Your thoughts, your feelings, your intent, and still manage to speak with coherence and purpose. That's the next step. Learning to organize your thoughts so that when you speak, your words have direction, foundation, and weight. Number 4, structuring your ideas. There's something we often overlook. Most of the time, when we struggle to speak clearly, it's not because we lack words or feel nervous. It's because our thoughts are a mess. One idea interrupts another before it's finished. A sentence trails off before we remember what we meant to say. The result: our listeners are confused and we're lost in our own mental chaos. The real issue isn't speech. It's how we organize our thoughts before we open our mouths. The Stoics taught that the mind should be trained to be clear and orderly, like a disciplined soldier, knowing what it's doing, why it matters, and what comes next. An untrained mind acts like a wildfire, spreading in all directions, burning down even the very message we meant to convey. So, before we learn to speak well, we must learn to think with structure. It's actually simple. One of the most effective methods is to ask yourself 3 questions. What am I trying to say? Why does it matter? Is there an example that proves my point? When you say, I don't think we should expand this project because the costs are exceeding the budget, just like what happened in Phase A, your words are not only clear, but also persuasive. That's because they have direction, reasoning, and evidence. Think about how many times you knew exactly what you wanted to say, but when someone asked, you began with, well, what I mean is, and lost momentum. It's not that you lacked ideas. You just hadn't given them a path to follow. Like a piece of music without rhythm, your words lacked flow, and the listener couldn't connect with what you were trying to express. That's why it helps to build a tiny outline either in your head or on paper before expressing something important. Nothing long, just a few bullet points. Main idea, reason, example. It sounds so simple that many people skip it. But that simplicity is the gateway to clarity. Every sentence you speak becomes part of an invisible current, beginning, middle, and end, pulling the listener along with both understanding and trust. Someone who trains their mind in the Stoic spirit doesn't let their words be random. Every sentence reflects a trained mind, calm, precise, and intentional. Because speaking isn't just about filling silence. It's about delivering value. And if you want your words to carry weight, they need structure. Once you learn to manage your stream of thought, the pressure to sound good disappears. Instead, you speak with clarity, and that clarity is what makes you compelling. It's also the foundation for something even more powerful: confidence. Because true confidence doesn't grow from chaos. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. Number 5. Cultivating speaking confidence. A soldier doesn't step onto the battlefield in fear, but with faith in their discipline and ability. Speaking with confidence works the same way. Confident speakers don't wait until everything is perfect before they open their mouths. They speak because they understand what's truly within their control. Their thoughts, their actions, and their attitude. Stoicism teaches that if you can master your inner world, you don't need to control every external condition to remain steady. And speech, what seems like surface-level expression, is a mirror of that inner strength. Confidence doesn't appear like a gift out of nowhere. It's built, piece by piece, through small, repetitive actions, even boring ones. Try standing in front of a mirror and repeating a conversation you had today. Record yourself. Listen back without mercy. You might cringe at the sound of your voice. You might feel embarrassed. But Stoicism teaches that real growth comes through discomfort. You have to be willing to face your weaknesses if you want to train them into strengths. Filler words like like, or might seem harmless, but often they're not pauses for breath. They're ways to hide from uncertainty. Stoicism doesn't ask you to be fast or sharp all the time. It teaches the opposite. Speak less, say just enough, and only when your mind is clear. Replace those filler words with silence, and you're not stalling. You're taking control. You're showing that you speak by choice, not out of pressure. Confidence also shows in how your body supports your words. Someone might say all the right things, but if their eyes avoid contact, shoulders hunch, or hands fidget, their message disappears like smoke. Stand tall, hold your head up, and let your hands clarify, not distract from what you're saying. Stoicism teaches that every action, even the smallest gesture, should be intentional. A timely nod, a steady gaze. These say more about your steadiness than any words could. And if you still feel nervous before speaking, that doesn't mean you're not ready. Nervousness isn't a sign of weakness. It's a natural signal that you're stepping up to a challenge. Stoicism doesn't tell us to avoid emotion, but to walk through it using reason as our guide. Picture yourself speaking clearly, finishing strong, and being heard, not to daydream, but to train your mind to believe in what's possible. Maybe you've thought you're not the confident type, but that's a story from the past. Stoicism reminds us that we're shaped by the actions we choose today, not by old labels. Every time you speak is a chance to reset, to take ownership. Yourself wondering, am I good enough for others to listen? Maybe the real question is, have I been listening to myself clearly enough? If you've made it this far, you're not just here to speak better. You're here to live deeper, steadier. That's the Stoic spirit. Action, not for appearances, but for real value. If this message resonates with you, tap that like, not for support, but as a reminder, you're on the path to leveling up. And stay tuned, because what comes next won't just help you speak more clearly, it'll help you live more clearly. Number 6. Tailoring your message to listeners. We often focus so much on speaking eloquently that we forget the real goal: to be understood. Many people spend time polishing their words, refining their tone, and practicing a confident posture, yet overlooked the most important element: the listener. When you speak, you're not performing a monologue. Every word is part of a living conversation where emotion and attention matter far more than rhetorical technique. The Stoics remind us, if you truly want others to receive your ideas, you must be humble enough to step out of your own mind and into theirs. Adapting your message isn't about being slick or smooth. It's a sign of self-mastery, the core of Stoic thought. You can't control how others react, but you can control how you communicate. With someone new, you choose simple language, relatable examples, and you don't wield knowledge like a sword to prove your sharpness. With an expert, you get straight to the point, open up deeper angles, and avoid repeating what they've heard 100 times before. This finesse doesn't come from technique. It comes from effort, a willingness to stand in someone else's shoes. Surprisingly, the more you do this, the more confident you feel. Because when your attention shifts to the other person, the anxiety, what if I say something wrong? Are they judging me? Starts to fade. It's not that you've silenced fear, you just don't have time for it. You're too focused on observing, responding, and connecting. You speak not to impress, but to serve what's happening in the other person's mind. And true confidence, as the Stoics teach, isn't about controlling what others think of you. It's about mastering how you respond to it. Ever wonder why some people speak and no one listens while others say the same thing, and heads start to nod? It's because the latter speaks to what the listener needs, not what they themselves want to say. Communication without adjustment is just expression. But when you adjust, you build a bridge, a shared path. As the Stoics say, words should clarify truth, not showcase ego. The Bible wrote, "Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone." That's not advice on how to win. It's a guide for living with others. Grace, born of a listening heart, and a wisdom that chooses the right words. Start by watching, listening, and asking yourself, what does this person need most right now? From there, you don't speak to impress, you speak to connect. And that's what sets you apart. Once you've built the habit of observing and adjusting, the next step is to act. Not just in one-on-one settings, but in front of a crowd where all eyes are on you. Where the pressure rises and where your composure is truly tested. Let's take the next step. Learning to speak in public. Not just to sharpen your skills, but to cultivate calm in the soul. Number 7, building public speaking skills. No one becomes a great speaker by sitting still, just like no one becomes a warrior by lounging in a living room. If you want to speak fluently, you have to step out of your comfort zone, but that doesn't mean jumping straight onto a stage. It starts in familiar places. Dinner with family, coffee with close friends. These casual conversations, seemingly harmless, are actually your training ground. This is where you learn to control your voice, your gaze, and your breath. No one's judging you there. And that's exactly why it's the perfect place to practice. The Stoics teach that you can't control outcomes, but you can always control your actions. So, instead of worrying whether you'll speak well, focus on preparing and showing up. Try telling a story that once made you feel embarrassed, but this time, take charge of it. Use pauses, inflections, and eye contact. Don't be afraid to bring in visual aids, an old photo, or a meaningful object. These props aren't just for your audience. They anchor you when your thoughts start to waver, like a training sword for a beginner. Not meant for battle, but for learning how to hold steady. You can also ask simple questions as you speak, not to test your audience, but to draw them into your story. What would you have done? A question like that creates a connection. Don't focus on memorizing every word. Think instead about the feeling you want people to walk away with. They may not remember every detail, but they'll remember how you made them feel. Start with something that just happened to you. Tell it with real emotion in plain language and structure it so people can follow along. Speaking isn't about showing off vocabulary. It's about guiding thought clearly, like cleaning up a messy room in your mind and inviting someone in. Will they get lost, or will you lead them through in a way that makes them want to stay? Many believe powerful speaking is a gift, but the Stoics would tell you talent is unreliable. Discipline is everything, and discipline means practice. Every day, just a little. Don't wait to feel ready. You won't. Just start. Even if you stammer, even if your face turns red, it's those moments that forge true composure. And if you want to gain real command over your words, there's a tool even more powerful than speaking. Writing. Writing reveals what's tangled in your mind, what needs to go, and what hasn't yet taken shape. It's the next stage where your thinking is sharpened like steel, and every word you write becomes silent training for your voice. That's where we're headed next. Writing as a path to stronger speaking, where logic is honed, line by line. Number 8. Using writing to sharpen speech. The most articulate people don't start with speaking. They start with writing. Not because they want to become writers, but because they need clarity within themselves before they can expect others to understand them. The Stoics taught that to master the external world, you must first master your internal one. And when your thinking is a mess, your words are just noise, echoing that chaos. Writing is how you force yourself to slow down, how you watch your thoughts unfold like lines on a page. Your mind exposed letter by letter. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just one page of journaling each morning, asking simple questions. What am I thinking today? What's weighing on me? What's worth chasing? These small questions don't just calm the mind. They train you to organize your ideas. And that's the foundation of speaking with clarity. Through writing, you start to notice which words you repeat too often, which thoughts keep looping, and which emotions are silently shaping your logic. That's the moment you're sharpening your thinking without ever stepping in front of a crowd. Writing also helps you choose words more precisely, something we often skip in daily conversations. When someone keeps saying like, sort of, or you know, it's not because they lack vocabulary, it's because they've never taken the time to sit down and ask themselves, what am I really trying to say? Editing your writing is a stoic exercise. In itself, cut what's unnecessary. Keep what matters and never cling to clever lines that don't mean anything. You learn to be ruthless with your own words so you can be more generous when speaking to others. And once your writing feels tight and clear, reading it out loud becomes a way to train your voice to follow your thoughts. You hear where you stumble, where your emphasis is off, where your breath runs short, or your timing breaks down. Things that usually slip by when you speak off the cuff. Each time you read like this, you're turning your voice into an extension of your thinking, not a mask for uncertainty. You might think you're not a writer, that you don't have the right words. But remember, the goal isn't to sound good, it's to be real. Writing isn't about performing, it's about seeing clearly. And once you see clearly, you'll speak clearly. The strange part is, the more you write, the less afraid you are to speak. Not because you've become more confident, but because you've realized most of the fear you once felt came from being unprepared inside. And that's where we're going next. Learning to face anxiety, not by hiding from it, but by confronting it head on. Number 9, managing speaking anxiety. There are moments when you're about to say something important, but your body betrays you. Your heart races, your palms sweat, your mind goes blank. Not because you don't know what to say, but because a silent wave called anxiety is rising inside you. According to Stoic philosophy, emotions aren't enemies to be eliminated. They're signals to be observed, understood, and transformed. Anxiety isn't a flaw. It's a sign that you're facing something that matters. Instead of letting it take control, start with what's closest, your breath. Inhale for seconds, hold for 4. Exhale for 4. A simple rhythm, yet it soothes your nervous system like cool water poured into overheated hands. The Stoics didn't teach us to run from emotion. They taught us to control how we respond to it. When you take charge of your breath, you slowly reclaim your body, and with it, your voice. But control alone isn't enough. To speak clearly, you need clarity in your thoughts. Stoics didn't wait for inspiration. They prepared. They entered important situations with intention, not out of perfectionism, but out of respect for themselves and for those who listen. Hold your key points firmly in mind. Map out your flow like an architect sketching a blueprint. The more prepared you are, the freer you become. No longer dragged around by uncertainty. Here's what matters. Anxiety doesn't mean weakness. You feel nervous because you care. It's proof you're present, that you're standing at the edge of something meaningful. If you see anxiety not as resistance, but as fuel. You can use it to move forward. Stoicism doesn't promise you'll feel nothing. It shows you how to stay grounded through everything you feel. So the next time your heart pounds before you speak, ask yourself, am I afraid or am I ready? The answer matters less than what you do next. Step up, speak out, and keep practicing. Because real courage isn't about avoiding the shake. It's about showing up anyway. Overcoming anxiety isn't a single moment of triumph. It's a habit of living, a kind of discipline the Stoics lived by, steady, honest, unshakable. And if you've made it this far, if you've faced the thing that frightens you, then maybe you're ready for the final lesson. That only through constant refinement can we protect the quality of every word we speak and every action we take in this one life we get to live. Number, evolving your communication. Some people dream of speaking with clarity and impact, yet forget one simple truth. Eloquence isn't instinctive, it's trained. The Stoics understood this well. They didn't chase instant perfection. They committed to steady, consistent progress. Stoicism teaches that any skill, whether swordsmanship, emotional control, or articulate speech, begins with small, deliberate, repeated actions. No one wakes up one day suddenly persuasive and magnetic. That kind of voice is forged through trial, error, observation, and course correction. Great communicators don't just speak well, they listen deeply. They listen to others, yes, but also to themselves. In feedback from friends and colleagues, in hesitant glances, in silences that stretch too long. They don't get defensive. They sift through critique to find what's unclear, what's missing the mark. They aren't perfectionists. They're patient. Like a potter with clay, they accept their first few vases will be uneven as long as their hands grow steadier with time. Eventually, they start looking beyond themselves. They study others, speakers they admire, but they don't imitate. They dissect. Why does this person hold a room's attention? Why can that speaker silence a crowd with just one line? They're not dazzled by surface style. They search for substance, how ideas are structured, where pauses fall when emphasis hits. When they watch a speech, they're not just spectators. They're apprentices taking mental notes. From there, curiosity grows. Not confined to public speaking, but spilling into life. They read to deepen their minds. They listen to podcasts to broaden their perspective. They explore new ideas to sharpen their thinking, not to perform, but so that when the moment comes to speak, their mind isn't empty. As the Stoics say, speech is just the tip of the iceberg. Its strength lies in the depth of thought beneath it. So the real question isn't how do I speak better, but am I living in a way that's worth listening to? If you live with clarity, your words will carry clarity. If you live with honesty, your voice will carry weight. And if today you feel you're not a great speaker yet, then begin. Not with a grand gesture. Ask a friend if your point was clear. Watch someone you find compelling. Read a page tonight. Progress doesn't come from a single breakthrough. It comes from 1,000 small, repeated steps. And that's exactly how the Stoics moved forward, quietly, steadily, without stopping. We've just explored principles to help you speak with clarity, confidence, and conviction. Not through flashy rhetoric, but by training your mind, organizing your thoughts, and building strength from within. From expanding your vocabulary and practicing active listening to learning how to adapt to the person in front of you, each lesson is more than just a communication skill. It's part of a deeper journey of personal growth. Stoicism reminds us that calm, reason, and discipline don't just help us navigate challenges, they give weight to our words. They turn everyday conversations into reflections of a conscious, grounded life. There are no shortcuts here, only small, steady steps. But it's that persistence that makes all the difference. And if something in this video stirred something in you, don't ignore it. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to know what's been on your mind and which lesson resonated most with you. If you're ready to keep going on this path with me, where philosophy doesn't just stay on the page, but comes alive in what we do, hit subscribe. There's so much more ahead, and we're only getting started. Conclusion: speaking clearly isn't about charisma. It's about clarity. It's about stripping away noise, mental and emotional, and showing up with truth, discipline, and purpose. The 10 rules you've just explored aren't quick hacks. They're long-term tools designed to realign your voice with your inner clarity. From calming anxiety and strengthening your vocabulary to learning active listening and building public confidence, this is a framework for growth rooted in the timeless wisdom of Stoicism. So next time your voice shakes, remember, you're not broken, you're building. With every silent pause, every revised sentence, and every mindful word you sharpen, stay disciplined, speak with truth, and let your words carry the weight of a mind trained in calm, because your voice is more than sound. It's your philosophy spoken.